There we are. And we're back. Hopefully that won't happen again. As we had mentioned, we have some retail stores that open today. Sadly, we can't get all of our retail stores open because they require you to come in, and it's impossible with social distancing. So this afternoon at the regular press conference that updates us on what's going on in Toronto, the mayor was talking about high-tech companies that are trying to help retailers make the switch to the new normal, and that is online shopping and some digital shopping as well. But there's a lot of small businesses that are struggling as it is. They can't afford to do this. So a lot of companies have stepped forward to help out for free, and the mayor is issuing a challenge to see if more.
This is good corporate citizenship. This is the Toronto issuing a challenge for even more Toronto technology companies to get involved, as they've done countless times during this pandemic, and volunteer to build online stores for Toronto's independent businesses and artists.
So the mayor is joining us right now from isolation in his evil lair as well, from one evil lair to another one. Hi, Mr. Mayor, how are you?
Hey, Kevin, I'm good. How are you?
I am very well. So you are talking to us from your house. You must be doing a lot more work out of your house these days.
Well, it's interesting because I've never done much work because I spend so much of my time.
Wait, pardon me. Pardon me. You've never done much work? All right, that's it. We can end the show. We got our quote. We got our quote from the mayor.
There's no danger of anybody saying I don't try to work hard because I'm at events, and that's the thing. When there are no events on now.
Yeah.
And so if you're doing events, you're doing things online like this, so you do them from home. And then added to that, I had to spend 2 weeks because I came back from a wonderful trip to England selling Toronto over there. And I came back at just the time when they started to say when you came back from out of the country, you had to self-isolate. So I spent 2 weeks, first time I've ever probably done this in my life. In fact, I went 9 days without of the 14 without seeing another human being, which I'm sure in my entire life I never would have done before.
Yeah.
And I got used to working alone, though, because I was busy with these conference calls and Zoom calls and whatnot. And so now, yes, I'm doing more work from home because you actually can be very productive and you can use technology as we're doing. And it's actually great. But I do go to the City Hall because we do those briefings from there, and I have a number of different meetings. So, but yes, a lot more work from home, which is, and we're going to, look, Kevin, the truth is, a lot of people are going to have to continue to work from home probably through to the end of the year, if we're being straightforward about this. Because if you just look at one simple reason alone, we cannot take the TTC back up to the full ridership that was on it before the pandemic hit for health reasons. And so in order to do that, in order to not bring it back up to 1.6 million riders a day, there are going to have to be some people who probably work for big governments and big corporations that don't come back to work and that continue to work from home until well into the end of the year. Just because we can't put that strain on the system in terms of people being too close to each other and transmitting the virus.
So Charity just put a clip here. It's nice to have the stores opening up, but I'm scared of the second wave that might come. And this is something that you're taking very seriously. The public health is taking very seriously. You on one side, you want to get the economy going again. But on the other side, you've got to worry about the health in the future. That's a really tough tightrope to walk.
Well, we're doing it every day, and that's what we're here to do, is to make those judgments. But the reason why stores are open for curbside pickup today instead of just being open for people to come in, because I'm sure a lot of the shop owners would obviously prefer people could just come in and buy some clothes and try them on and take them away. But we had to sort of ease into this, because if we go straight back to crowd seats, look, it's the reason why the thing that probably was earned the greatest wrath of all the things that I've been responsible for was closing High Park, when the cherry blossoms were on. But if we had a crowd scene at High Park, there's a story, and you can check to see if it's true, but I believe it is part of history, that when the Spanish flu had its second and third waves back in the early part of the 20th century, they said one of the things that caused the second wave to occur was that there was a Charlie Chaplin premiere that took place, and hundreds of people in New York gathered outside the theater, and there was one super spreader, as they call it, somebody who had the virus and was working through the crowd, and that some huge number of people got the virus. In Korea, just now, 2 or 3 months ago, One woman, I'm sure you've read the story, in one church congregation continued to go to church when she knew she was sick. And they say 525 people got the virus because she went to church and gave it to 6 people who gave it to 6 people who gave it to 6 people. So that's why we have to make these judgments. And there's a lot of people that they're going, go faster, go faster, go faster. Well, they will not be saying that next fall if we're having some terrible second wave, when the governments are unable to step up perhaps and do all the support things they're doing now with the benefits and so on, and businesses are closed again. So we're having to be very careful, yes.
Let's talk about the new normal. And the new normal is going to be a lot more online and digital business. And that can be an expensive proposition, especially for retailers right now who even before this pandemic were facing new realities of higher rents. And, so what is your challenge all about to tech companies?
Well, what I want, it's shocking, actually, the number of, there's 2 things are shocking about our smaller businesses in Toronto. One is 5% of them only export anything out of the country at all. So they've never tried to export to, New York State or to Illinois or to Timbuktu. They have never tried. And the excellence of the products we produce in Toronto, you name it, on food. We now have food processors that produce Middle Eastern food that's exported to Lebanon and Egypt. I mean, it's bizarre to think about that, but we do. That's how good we are at doing things. And so 5% export, and then I think only a very small percentage, relatively speaking, I think it may be in the neighborhood of 20% now, have an online e-commerce presence. And the way in which they're going to make up for the new reality, which is that people might not be out and about shopping as much, and we were headed this way anyway, is that, yes, you maybe don't have the same people walking in the store as you used to buy stuff at your store, but what you have now is access to people in Atlanta or in Paris or in Hong Kong that can see your stuff and buy it online, just like we buy stuff from Amazon. So there's a whole world out there of 7 billion people waiting to serve and buy things from a small business in Toronto, which if they can just get online, they then have the opportunity to do. And I'm not being silly about it in terms of saying people in Lebanon are going to be holding their breath waiting for a Toronto shop to offer something. But, that's how there are jewelry stores in Toronto. You remember the old-fashioned neighborhood jewelry stores owned by some family. Very few of them are left to exist. The ones that exist now, yes, because they have loyal clientele in Toronto, but also because they've now gone online. And so people in Calgary can see a nice ring and buy it from the jeweler in Toronto and have it delivered the next day. And that is the future for retailing anyway. And that's why this program we announced is so important. And we want the tech companies to send forward some of the young people that may be under-occupied at the moment for free as a community contribution, get these small businesses online.
Well, essentially, Amazon has already set the pace with that. That is the new way of business. And if we can get our small business people doing that and doing it cheaply, then we will be able to compete. Who knows? Maybe this has been forcing us into the next wave, into the next way of doing business.
I saw a woman quoted this morning who has a store called Scout. I want to give her a shout out. I don't know the store. She has 2 of them called Scout in Toronto. And she said she was able to keep half her sales going online. Now, half is not 100%, and half doesn't pay all the bills. She said that. But the very fact she's been able to keep half her sales going on a sudden close down that happened because of the pandemic indicates that, there's a future there. And she may get to the stage eventually. I hope not, because we want to have strong neighborhoods with these shops that are part of the character of our neighborhoods. But she may get to the stage where she says, you know what? I'm not going to have any stores. I'm just going to have Scout online, and I'm going to make more money because I don't have to pay rent, and I'm going to make more money because I have a much bigger audience to sell stuff to. But whether that happens or not, and you don't want it to happen all over the place, I think this online presence is not just a nice to have for businesses, it's a necessity, an absolute necessity. Think if you're a restaurant today and all you have is a telephone to accept orders from people who want to come pick up food. You can do that. It can work. It worked back before we had the internet. But now if you can just accept orders by the internet and everybody can go on and see your website and pick off the menu and do it themselves, you're going to do a lot more business. And it's just a necessity for every kind of business to be online. And that's what we were announcing today was 3,000 more businesses we will get online between now and summer with help from all these companies and from the Schulich business students at York U. And we're going to get them online, 3,000 at least. And if we can do more, we'll do more. That's why the tech companies need to step up.
And one of the tricks, though, is let's make sure these businesses are still here come next summer.
Definitely.
And so you have been calling on landlords and building owners to also step up And you almost sounded it was a bit of a scolding kind of thing to the landlord, saying if you're still not negotiating, it is time to negotiate with your tenants. I want to talk to you about that in just a moment, if we could, because we're going to take a quick break right now, because I want to do, first of all, a biz bump. Now, we give away free commercials here for businesses that are struggling right now, and this is just one of those businesses, and one of the main reasons this guy is struggling is because he says his landlord refuses to negotiate with him or talk to him about trying to defer some rent or giving some breaks right now. And this is a business that has been there for 23 years. That's our biz bump for today. It's Amherst Home Healthcare. It's been in business for more than 2 decades, still operating during isolation. They have all the medical needs for you, such as orthotics and a full line of home safety products. They also supply products such as hospital beds and safety for elsewhere in the house. They also have pillows. I could use that. All Home Healthcare has been trusted for 2 decades.
We're asking a lot of those on the front lines of this pandemic, and they're stepping up. But a fighting spirit isn't enough. Nurses and healthcare professionals need the proper personal protective equipment to stay safe. It's their armor, their best line of defense, and yours. And when their shift is over, the protective equipment provides one last assurance, that it's safe to go home. Show your support at nursesknow.ona.org. A message from the Ontario Nurses Association.
Yeah, still to come this week. It's going to be a busy one. Matt McNamara is back tomorrow. He's from Tourism Toronto. We are going to be talking about sort of opening up your horizons when it comes to ordering from Toronto restaurants. We're going to help you discover some hidden gems for Takeout Wednesday. Of course, everyone is being asked to order from local restaurants on Wednesdays, so Matt is going to help us. That's why you haven't been on Tuesday. On Wednesday, Dr. Jason Fung will be joining me. He is an intermittent fasting expert. Is an intermittent fasting expert? No, he is the expert. He is the world-leading expert on intermittent fasting, especially when it comes not just to losing weight, but treating type 2 diabetes. This is going to be fascinating. He has a lot of questions from you that I know you want answered, and he'll be joining me coming on Wednesday. Right now, we are talking to the mayor. John Tory is with me. We just ran a commercial for National Nursing Week. I've got my Sick Kids Hospital on because that's where my daughter works as an RN, and that was how you spent the very first part of your morning, was congratulating nurses.
Yeah, I mean, nurses are, they're they're among the highest of the unsung heroes of the healthcare system. I know that when I've been with ill family members in the hospital, the doctors are great and they come and go. The nurses are there all the time, 24/7, and especially now they're having to have a degree of courage that involves the courage that's involved in them just going to work is like your daughter and others is huge. So. It's National Nurses Week, so everybody should just take a minute to phone somebody up they know that's a nurse, or if they happen to be anywhere near a hospital, to thank a nurse. It's also National Police Week, too, by the way, so
yes.
We should thank the police officers, too, because they're doing a great job, too. But these people, what's involved in the courage and the risk of their job is something that's quite remarkable, and we don't think about that. I said on something I was doing the other day that the only risk involved in my job is you get criticized or you get defeated. And, that's not the best, but I mean, compared to being exposed to illness or having to experience a lot of very traumatic things in people's lives, it's pretty tranquil, the stuff that that I go through as a public official. So,
well, John, just on a personal note, and we'll talk about the landlords in just a moment. But at a time like this, we need leadership. We need to listen. Do you find today's environment for politicians more difficult when it comes to emergencies like this, where we don't have time for any bickering or anything like that? Is how and I think that I have to say that the premier is also has stepped up incredibly. How difficult, though, is it to get at least people to listen to you, that this is the right thing to do and that you don't have a political agenda?
I think if you're calm, if you're collegial, meaning you work with the other governments, if you don't appear to be political, so you're not taking shots at other people, and you look like you're focused with your partners, meaning in my case, the federal and provincial government and lots of other nonprofit groups, the United Way, the Red Cross, if you seem to be all for one and one for all, as opposed to diverging off, as politicians often will, onto some sidebar item that really doesn't matter to anybody, then I think people will listen to you. And you also can't sort of, overdo it in terms of they don't want to hear from you 24 hours a day. What I found also very useful, I'll tell you, is that I've gone on one of your old haunts, BT, I've gone on CP24, I've gone on 1010 and answered questions every day. And rather than making some speech or making a commentary, I answer questions because there were a lot of questions. And you made reference at the beginning, people were very afraid for their lives in terms of their health. They were afraid for their jobs. They were afraid for their incomes, their everything. And all I did was on those days, every single day, and I've done it now for 9 weeks, just answer questions.
It's a voice. Yeah.
So you're telling people what they want to know about as opposed to what you think they want to know about. That helps a lot too.
Yeah, we need that voice of reason, that voice of calm. When we were kids, we looked to our parents, in a thunderstorm. Is it going to be okay? Is it going to be okay? And that's what my experience has been. And I'm finding people saying, okay, as long as everybody's talking about it or people are working at it, because really the vast majority of people are not going to contract COVID.
Correct.
And
so, have not.
Yeah. So this is why we're doing this. And I want to talk more about that in just a moment, about why we're doing this. And are we really, I want to know what kind of impact we really are having, because people are at this point are saying, I'm tired of this. I just want to go out. We'll talk about that. But I want to talk especially, though, about the need for landlords, and building owners and property owners to start thinking a different way. And that is that their bottom line has to sort of take a back seat now to compassion. So what are you asking them to do?
It's compassion. I agree with that. It's kind of what is the right thing to do by a tenant who one assumes has been a good tenant. Let's just assume it's been a good tenant for even not 25 years, but for 5 years. This is your business partner. But the part that is even just as important as compassion to me is that it doesn't make business sense on a street where there are already 10 vacancy signs because people have unfortunately gone out of business. It doesn't make sense for you to jam your tenant, who's a shop or a restaurant that's been with you for 5 years, such that they go out of business, and then you end up joining the ranks of the people that have the for lease signs out in front of your place, and you have no tenant. It just makes no business sense to me. And I think some of these people, I don't know what gets into them when they just sort of say, I've had the stories told to me where they'll say, I'm not even applying for that federal program. Too much trouble, paperwork, blah, blah, blah. I'd say, well, that's crazy. I mean, you should apply for this program. It helps you pay the rent. You help your tenant. Your tenant is still there. All gets sorted out in the next 4 or 5 months, and it's back to something, as you said, it's kind of like normal. But so to me, it's morally right. It is business right in most cases. And there's just no excuse for not going to the tenant and saying, you know what, you're having a tough time. Even if I take your payment and spread it over the next 18 months, so you pay me back a little bit of what you didn't pay in May for the next 18 months, I'd say, well, that's a reasonable kind of concession to make, and it costs that landlord next to nothing. Because I know landlords, they have mortgages and they have bills to pay, but a little sacrifice by them compared to the huge sacrifice of the guy that's their tenant who's had his whole business completely shut down, totally. So it makes no sense. It's not even morally right for them not to step up and do something, and they have to live with themselves, but that's just been my view. And I've gone on to say that if they don't react properly, the provincial government should stop them from evicting those tenants by banning evictions, as they've done for residential. At least that will stop these people from making insane decisions, while we're in the middle of this crisis.
And another thing you brought up in your update this afternoon, of course, is that we are the engine of the Canadian economy. You use some facts to back that up, but if we start seeing more vacancies than necessary here, and we start seeing retail close up, then so goes Toronto, so goes the rest of Canada.
That's right. Because you see, what happens is this: the local price we pay is not in money. Because quite frankly, the local price we pay is in the character of our neighborhoods, where if you have the Danforth or you have Yonge Street with a whole lot of those empty shops, it changes the character of the neighborhood. It changes the sidewalk and people just out for a walk on a Saturday and dropping into the local food store or whatever. The people that will pay the biggest price for those vacancies are in the rest of the country. Why? Because every penny of HST, every penny of corporate income tax, every penny of personal income tax from the people who are not working in those stores, all those taxes all go to the other two governments. And so if they're cut off from those dividends because those shops are all closed, they are going to be much the worse off. The whole country is going to be much the worse off because 20% of the national economy comes out of Toronto. And people hate to hear that, especially in the rest of the country. They hate it when the mayor of Toronto, they'd be throwing tomatoes at the screen right now if they're watching this outside of Toronto or outside of Ontario.
Yeah.
But that, you know what, Kevin? It's just a fact.
Yeah.
And if we're healthy here, we can help the rest of the country to rebuild and some of the things that are going on in Alberta or to help out in Newfoundland where they've got a lot of financial problems if we're healthy here. But that means all those shops have to be open, selling things and employing people. That's as simple as that.
Okay. Sadly, I'm about to lose you because you have a conference call at 7:30 in about 6 minutes time. What is that all about?
Yep. Well, I'm having a conference call with all of the federal MPs from Toronto who all happen to be Liberal because the city elected 25 Liberal MPs. And I'm going to be talking to them about the financial problems of cities generally, but particularly Toronto. But I'm going to talk about all the cities around the country because we've all met together and we have some serious financial problems. For example, the fact people are not taking transit is costing us revenue of $23 million a week. So you do the math. If it goes on for 10 weeks, that's $230 million that we don't have, but we're still operating the transit service, still paying the drivers, still putting gas in the buses, diesel. So, we need to make up that money and we need help from the other governments to do that, or otherwise we'd have to bring in a massive property tax increase, which I won't do, or dramatically cut services, which I also won't do because this is the time more than ever when people in Toronto need those services.
Okay, John, the last words are going to belong to you here with this conversation. And again, there are your constituents, the citizens of, well, not only this city, but anybody who's watching outside of Toronto, outside the GTA, and
Sure.
and they're looking to leaders for answers because we've been 2 months doing this now. Are we having an impact? Have we been doing a good job? Is there any good news? Is there truly that light at the end of the tunnel?
First of all, the numbers are starting to change. So you can see the daily case report numbers, which are not the whole answer, but it gives you an indication that the number of new cases is diminishing. And there are other things you look at, which is how many people in the hospital, how many in intensive care, and so on. Things are getting better, number one. Number two, I want to say thank you because they're getting better in part because people actually are taking to heart the advice they got early on, and it was harder for people to get used to staying 6 feet apart from other people and not visiting their grandmother and doing all those kinds of things, and people are starting to take it seriously. They have some time ago, so thank you for that because that's why the numbers are going down. And then thirdly, I want to just say this. Have hope. Toronto was a great city before the pandemic. We were the top 10 most livable cities in the world, top 10 financial center, top 3 in tech in all of North America, everything. We were on every list. All of the fundamentals that put us on those lists, including in particular our values as Torontonians, which have seen us step up and help each other during the pandemic, and our quality of life here, they're all still true. We're going to have some bumps to get over getting out of this, but the bottom line is the values, the attractiveness of Toronto. I predict to you that when we open up everything again and open up foreign travel to come here, there'll be as many people wanting to come and live here from around the world. Think about it. If you were today offered a job in New York, London, or Toronto, which one would you take? Given what's gone on with the pandemic and a bunch of other things, you'd come to Toronto. And that's what was going on before the pandemic. So I want people to have hope that the city was great before the pandemic. It was on fire with investment and job creation and creativity and innovation and the arts and great musicians and so on. And when this is over, if you can just stay the course for a bit longer, we're starting to open things up. It will be great again. And it will be great again soon, like not 10 years from now. People are saying, yes, there's going to be adjustments in our life that will be permanent, but it'll be great again soon because it is great. And so I just hope people remember that and have that sense of hope and see us through the last couple of weeks of tough conditions, and then I think there is light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not a train.
Do you think maybe after this, our relationship with the Premier's office, the city's relationship, will be better? It was a little rocky, but do you think maybe this might
Kevin, frankly, for the last year, it's been fine because Mr. Ford had a very aggressive group of advisors, which he changed out. I think he got used to the job because he had a couple of years' experience now. And these are difficult jobs to get used to. I'd never worked at the City Hall a day in my life, and I walked in as mayor. He walked in as premier, never having been in that building to work. And so you have to learn these jobs. You have to learn the style that works and working with other people. And so I think the relationship's been better for a year, but it's been particularly good during this pandemic because we've all realized that, you know what, if we don't stick together, we'll sink together. And that doesn't serve anybody of the people we all represent. And they're all the same people. The people Doug Ford represents in Toronto are the same people I represent and the same people Justin Trudeau represents. And so they expect us to work together to get out of this mess we're in. And they know it's not a mess we created, but it's a mess they expect us to clean up as best we can here. And I think we're trying to do that very well together. And, so far, so good.
Well, you spend your days thanking people. You spend your days pointing things out. You spend your days as a leader. And one of the problems that happens is that a lot of politicians don't get the encouragement and the support sometimes that they need as well. So I know that you have been working day and night on this, that work doesn't stop when you go home. So I want to thank you and what City Council is doing, what the Public Health Department is doing. We've talked about our heroes as our first responders and that, but we have to remember that, City Hall, while they're still distancing, it's still functioning, it's still working, still goes on. I thank you for your service. I thank you for this. And you know what? You tell those MPs that we need their help and we need their support. Thank you very much for being with me.
I'll pass that on. And Kevin, we miss seeing you every day on television, but we see you right here, and this is just as good because we get to see you and all that you bring and all the warmth that you always brought, and that's why people love you. So
yeah, but I have to wear socks when I'm on television.
I can't believe it. At least you're wearing pants.
Well, today's a good day. Yeah, you got me on a good day.
You are. Well, that's those kind of fake pants that just have a bottom to them. I thank you for having me on, and I'll come back another time maybe in the times when this is over and we can just talk about other things.
Darn right. All right. Thank you very much, John Tory.
Thanks a lot.
Right.
Bye now.
John Tory talking to me from his house. He is on to a conference call right now with the MPs from the GTA, and as he had mentioned, there is quite a lot of Liberal MPs in there. There he goes, hanging up. A lot of Liberal MPs representing the GTA. So what did you folks think? I know we like to bitch and complain about our politicians. I know we like to say, why did you let this happen? Why aren't you helping me? But from what I've seen from Queen's Park, from Nathan Phillips Square, I have seen that our politicians here at least are stepping up. I look what's happening south of the border, my friends, and I would not want to be there right now. One of the main reasons that we are in this mess today, why there was a pandemic in the first place, is because of leadership and a lack of leadership. And I'm not talking about here in Toronto. I'm talking about from the World Health Organization, from the United States, from China, because nobody seemed to trust each other. Nobody wanted to take action. Nobody wanted to shut their economy down and be a leader. Nobody wanted to be a leader. What happens when there's the next pandemic? When it comes right down to it, relatively speaking, COVID-19 is relatively mild compared to some viruses that could hit us. What happens then when we don't have leadership and we're not willing to listen, or we're listening to them argue with each other? If nothing else, after this pandemic, what has to happen is there has to be a newfound respect for leadership, and there has to be a new world order for leadership as well. The horrible decisions, the terrible decisions that are being made from the White House now are literally killing people. And we can't have that anymore. So when we have John Tory and we have Doug Ford, like I say, Oh, you can complain all you want, but when it comes right down to it, they're our leaders. They are the ones that are going to lead us out of this or back into it. So I want everybody to think about that, how we think about our leaders and what we demand of our leaders as well. And when we start thinking about maybe electing people who have radical right-wing ideas or radical left-wing ideas, and we think, yes, that's going to be the way. Well, we get what we deserve, right? We get what we deserve. So to all of our leaders out there, to all the councils, the mayors, the reeves, the premier, to the MPPs, to the MPs, to all of our bureaucrats, thank you. You don't get that enough. You don't get that very much. And I know you get crapped on all the time, but you are why a lot of people have not died. Always remember that. One thing I forgot to run yesterday, do you remember with the from the Toronto Student Media Network, the video that they crowdsourced and had a young lady perform so well and had a gentleman who did the animation for it. And it's such a great message. So this song was crowdsourced. All the lyrics came from Toronto students. All the artwork came from Toronto students. And then we, of course, had the animation that was done by a student as well. So I'm going to leave you with that because it has such a great message. So, folks, until tomorrow night, take care of yourself and take care of each other.
Coronavirus. 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 Coronavirus.
When times get rough, all we gotta do is stick together. Stay positive, spread love, and keep on smiling. Don't give up on hope, hold your head high. You're strong enough, we'll be alright. It won't be long, better times will come. We'll be joining hands and singing this song. Put our hearts together and we'll be just fine. This won't last forever, we got lots of time. Change the sad thoughts in your head. Focus on what's going right instead. Oh, stay positive. Oh, when times get rough and you think you've had enough, keep fighting through this. Nothing is impossible. Don't give up on hope, hold your head high, you're strong enough, we'll be alright. It won't be long, better times will come, we'll be joining hands and singing this song. Put our hearts together and we'll be just fine. This won't last forever, we got lots of time. Change the sad thoughts in your head. Focus on what's going right instead. Oh, stay positive. Oh, don't close your eyes. Don't hide away. Keep looking forward. Look for the brighter days. Put our hearts together and we'll be just fine. This won't last forever. We got lots of time. time. Change the sad thoughts in your head. Funky songs going right instead. Oh, stay positive. Oh, stay positive.
COVID-19, why you do this to me? I really don't like being stuck in quarantine. I have no toilet paper, I don't even have a snack. Hey, coronavirus, I want my life back. Well, hey,